If you are over 50 and every morning feels like your body is waking up slower than your mind, this may be one of the most overlooked reasons why. The problem may not just be age, it may be the quiet combination of chronic inflammation, stubborn belly fat, and tired mitochondria inside your cells. And there is one simple morning drink that may help push all three in a better direction. Not a detox shot, not a fat-burning powder, not one of those miracle drinks that promises everything and delivers nothing. I'm talking about plain, unsweetened brewed green tea. Now let me be very clear, because this is where most videos get it wrong. Green tea is not magic. It will not melt belly fat off your body in a week. It will not cure arthritis, diabetes, heart disease, or fatigue. But when you understand what happens inside the aging body, especially after 50 or 60, you start to see why this one habit may be far more powerful than it looks. Because the real issue is not just what the scale says. The real issue is the biology underneath the scale. And that biology changes with age. As we get older, many of us develop something researchers call chronic low-grade inflammation. I want to emphasize the words low-grade, because this is not the kind of inflammation you feel when you cut your finger or twist your ankle. That kind of short-term inflammation is part of healing. The problem is the slow, constant inflammatory signal that stays switched on in the background for years. Scientists sometimes call this inflammaging. It is one of the hallmarks of aging, and it has been linked to many age-related problems, from slower physical function to higher disease risk. In other words, your body can start acting like there is a small internal fire that never quite goes out. And this is where it gets more important after 50. One of the biggest fuel sources for that internal fire is not just weight in general, but excess body fat that behaves like an active metabolic organ. Overstuffed fat cells do not simply sit there storing energy. They release signals that can promote inflammation, disturb blood sugar control, and push the body further into metabolic trouble. That is why belly fat matters so much. It is not only about how your clothes fit, it is about what that tissue may be saying to the rest of your body all day long. And once that inflammatory conversation gets louder, your body becomes less efficient at using fuel, which makes weight control even harder. Now let's go one layer deeper, because here is what most people never get told. Inside nearly every cell in your body are tiny structures called mitochondria. These are often called the power plants of the cell because they help turn food and oxygen into usable energy. But they do much more than that. They are involved in metabolism, cellular stress responses, and even how cells decide whether to repair themselves or shut down. As mitochondria age, energy production and cellular cleanup can become less efficient. That can make you feel older than your calendar says, more fatigue, less resilience, slower recovery. And when metabolic health worsens, that can feed inflammation too. So now you can see the chain. Chronic inflammation worsens metabolic function, excess belly fat adds more inflammatory signaling, and aging mitochondria make the whole system less efficient. So where does green tea fit into this picture? Green tea contains natural compounds called catechins, especially one called EGCG, along with a modest amount of caffeine. Think of catechins as plant defense compounds that may help support the body's own defense systems. They have been studied for their effects on oxidative stress, inflammation, metabolism, and body composition. Caffeine can also slightly increase energy expenditure and alertness. Together, these compounds may help nudge the body toward better fat use and a calmer inflammatory environment. Not dramatically, not overnight, but measurably enough that researchers have kept studying them for years. And this is where the headline starts to make sense. When people say this morning drink can help burn belly fat, the responsible version of that claim is this. Green tea may modestly support fat loss, including abdominal fat, especially when it replaces a worse morning habit and becomes part of a consistent routine. In one randomized trial, a catechin-enriched green tea beverage led to a greater reduction in visceral fat area over 12 weeks than a control beverage. Other studies have suggested benefits for abdominal fat during weight loss efforts, but the findings are not perfectly uniform, and that matters. Some newer trial data have been mixed, which is exactly why I do not want you to think of this as a miracle. I want you to think of it as a biologically smart nudge. What about inflammation? This is another place where green tea looks promising, but only if we use honest language. A recent systematic review and meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials found evidence that green tea supplementation can influence inflammatory and oxidative stress markers in adults. That does not mean your inflammation will suddenly drop by next Tuesday. It means the compounds in green tea may help shift the internal environment in a healthier direction over time. And for older adults, that matters because even a modest improvement in the biology underneath the surface may support better aging, better mobility, and better metabolic resilience. Now let's talk about the phrase mitochondria wake up, because I like that phrase as a metaphor, but I do not want to misuse the science. A cup of green tea does not literally reboot your cells like a software update, but it may support some of the signaling pathways related to energy handling, oxidative stress, and mitochondrial quality control. That is the smarter way to say it. For an older adult who wakes up feeling puffy, inflamed, sluggish, and metabolically stuck, that can feel like the body is waking up again. Not because one drink performed a miracle, but because it may be helping the cell do its job a little more cleanly. That difference matters. But the real reason this matters goes deeper. The biggest benefit of this drink may not come only from what it adds, it may come from what it replaces. If your morning routine starts with a sugar-heavy coffee drink, sweet tea, fruit juice, or a so-called healthy bottled beverage loaded with calories, you may be pouring fuel directly onto the metabolic fire you are trying to put out. Blood sugar rises, insulin rises, hunger comes back sooner, and the body stays stuck in a pattern that favors fat storage and energy swings. Replacing that with unsweetened green tea is a very different biological message. It says less sugar, fewer liquid calories, more polyphenols, and a steadier start to the day. That is where the real power begins. So how should you actually use it? Here is the practical approach I recommend, especially for adults over 50. Start with 1 cup of plain brewed green tea in the morning, ideally with breakfast or just after it. Not on a completely empty stomach if tea tends to make you nauseated. Brewed tea is the key. Not a highly concentrated extract capsule, not a mystery powder, not a fat burner blend. If you tolerate caffeine well, a 2nd cup later in the morning can be reasonable for many people, but keep it earlier in the day if sleep is an issue. And do not sabotage the entire benefit with honey, sugar, syrups, whipped toppings, or sweetened bottled teas. The simpler it is, the more useful it becomes. And here is the mistake that limits the result for so many seniors. They focus on the drink, but ignore the meal next to it. After 50, and especially after 60, maintaining muscle becomes harder. Muscle is not just for strength. Muscle is metabolic currency. It helps handle blood sugar better, supports mobility, and gives the body a bigger engine for using fuel. So if your green tea sits beside a breakfast of toast, jam, and juice, you may still be sending your body a high-carb, low-protein signal that works against your goal. But if that same tea is paired with a protein-rich breakfast like eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, tofu, or another solid source of protein, now the strategy becomes much smarter for healthy aging. I also want to give you the safety side, because that is part of being honest. Brewed green tea is generally considered safe for most adults, but it does contain caffeine, so it may worsen palpitations, anxiety, tremor, reflux, or insomnia in some people. Concentrated green tea extracts are a different story and have been linked to liver injury in some cases, which is one more reason I prefer the brewed drink instead of the pill. Green tea and herbal products can also interact with medications, so if you take prescription medicines, especially for the heart, blood pressure, blood thinning, or other chronic conditions, talk with your clinician or pharmacist before making a major change. And if you are on warfarin, consistency matters. So let's bring this all together. If you are a senior dealing with stubborn belly fat, low morning energy, and that feeling that your body is running slower than it used to, the answer is probably not a miracle cleanse. It is not starvation. It is not some expensive powder with a dramatic label. It may start with a very simple morning decision that shifts your biology in a healthier direction. Unsweetened brewed green tea, used consistently, replacing sugary drinks, paired with a smarter breakfast, and supported by the bigger habits that matter most, like walking, strength training, sleep, and protein. That is how inflammation begins to calm down. That is how belly fat becomes easier to lose. That is how your cells get better conditions for making energy. Not all at once, but step by step, and that is how real change happens. And that is the message I want you to remember today. After 50, the goal is not to find a magic drink. The goal is to give your aging body better signals first thing in the morning. Better fuel, better inflammatory balance, better metabolic direction. Green tea may help do that. So I want to ask you, what is your usual morning drink right now? Coffee, tea, juice, or something else? And have you ever tried replacing it with plain green tea for 2 straight weeks to see how your body responds? Let me know in the comments. If this helped you understand the biology of aging in a simple way, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with someone over 50 who needs to hear that healthy aging is often built on small daily habits, not hype. I'm Dr. Leana, and I'll see you in the next video.